Okay, this is a PS5 HDMI repair. Customer brought it in because there's no video. We're just gonna test it really quick first. PS5 is already powering on and you can see there's nothing on the tester here. Sometimes it's pretty obvious when the HDMI port is messed up. In this case, it's not so obvious. That's why I use the tester, but you can definitely see it's a little bit bent. It's one of the most common repairs that we do here. We're gonna go ahead with the disassembly. These PS5s have a ton of screws in them. It's the most time-consuming part. Thankfully, we have the electric screwdriver here that speeds things up. This one's not so dirty. Sometimes they get very dirty. This particular model doesn't have as many screws as the usual models. So we're gonna go ahead and add low melt solder to these lugs here to make the removal a little bit easier. And then we're gonna preheat from the bottom of the board for a little bit. And then we'll continue heating from the other side. These lugs have to melt first, but you always make sure that the individual pins are ready to go too, because otherwise you'll pull this up and you'll lift a bunch of traces. Then it'll be like 10 times the amount of work. Before it cools down, clear out the little holes here. Add some flux, still taking advantage of the fact that there's residual heat there. Clean the pads, gotta be careful not to lose a little capacitor that's right there. I'll clean it up really quick. I think some of the pins came off of it. Next I'm gonna add solder and make sure you have a decent amount. Here you can see where the pins were broken off. This is our new port right here. We're gonna tin the pins on this as well. It's gonna make for a much nicer wetting action. I see a lot of guys that only tin the pads, but the thing is these pins are gonna soak up a whole bunch of that solder, and if you tin both the pads and the pins, you get a much nicer heel. Usually I just drag solder. Gotta use lots of flux here. And then back over here, before putting the port on, I preheat until I just start to see the solder on the pads start to melt. Flux. Drop the port, and I'm going to give you a close-up there. You're going to see the wetting action. After you solder, you go through all the pins, inspect to make sure everything looks good, make sure none of these pins are moving. And you can see in front of the pins, each one has a little heel in front of it. That's kind of what you want. That's a good solder joint. So now that we know that that's good, next step is to solder these lugs right here. These are a little bit harder because it takes a lot of heat, and you also have to make sure that the solder passes through all the way to the other side of the board. Another thing that I see that comes in from a lot of other shops is that they'll solder this and you'll have solder on this side, but it doesn't go through all the way to the other side, and that doesn't give you a stable mechanical connection, and this loosens up over time. So to solder this, what I always do is I basically use a ton of solder. First it's going to look like it's too much solder, but that's only going to be at first. So some of that went down, and that means that it's starting to go through the other side, which is good. And then since the soldering iron just isn't enough, even though it's a pretty powerful soldering iron, I help myself with the hot air station. And you have to do this swiftly so it doesn't fall off, because the port will just fall back right off. So you do both at the same time, and you can see the solder blob shrinks as the solder wets through to the other side of the board. You can see this one went through well, and this one not so much. You could have used a little bit more heat. In that case, you can also flux on this side. When I don't get it on the first try, usually I'll just follow up like this. Little bit of solder on this side. The point here is to try and coerce the solder that's on the other side to flow up, and that should be good. It should be a good, strong mechanical connection now. Let's inspect it under the microscope. But anyway, this should be good. It's just time to clean now. And the best way I found to clean these things without leaving any kind of residue is to use air. So really quick before reassembly, I try and gather as much of the liquid metal. I'll make sure to cover the dead spot. The clamp on first. One last thing I always do is spray contact cleaner on the HDMI port, because during the cleaning process, when you're removing the flux, you always get a little bit of residue there. You always want to make sure to blow it out. So moment of truth, hopefully there's no issues. So So this is already a good sign. All the transmission lines are working. Everything's working good. You got the PS5 logo. That was a successful repair. And thank you for watching the video.